Jay Spojman for Federal Ammunition. Want to talk to you today, especially those of you that are new to the coyote calling game, about some specific tips and tactics that are really going to stack the odds of success in your favor when you go out to make those coyote stands. We focus so much on the calls we use that we often forget about location. And while it's important to match the sound of our e-collar or our hand calls to the prey that we're noticing in the area, it's even more important, in my opinion, to call into good areas where coyotes are likely to be. So how do we find those areas? Well, for me, regardless of where I'm hunting coyotes in the country, it all starts on a digital mapping system on a computer. Onyx, HuntWise, Basemap, there's lots of them that you can use. What you're looking for is something that'll provide you a 3D aerial image. It will show you the terrain that you're planning on hunting. The reason I'm so fond of Onyx is the fact that I can put it in a hybrid mode and it will lay topo lines, contour lines, over the 3D imagery. This allows me to see rises, dips, areas that are big and flat and open, and I can find locations where I can call from. Once I get out in the field, I'm paying attention to the same thing. Yes, I have spots predetermined from my maps, but I'm paying attention to areas that I can get into that will likely hold coyotes. And more importantly, I'm paying attention to how I can get into those areas without tipping my hand to those coyotes. One of my favorite types of locations to call to, and these areas are very common out west, they're common in several parts of the country, are big sage flats or cactus draws or dry creeks, or even creeks with a little bit of water in them that have lots of cover. Tamarack, cottonwoods, brushy old homesteads, those types of areas typically hold coyotes, and the reason for that is twofold. First, they're full of food. These areas are full, chock full of birds, rabbits, mice, other rodents, key food sources for coyotes. In addition to having a lot of food, these areas make great loafing zones. They make great bedding zones. They have plenty of cover where coyotes feel safe and food is nearby. And then if you can go a step further and find what I'm sitting on, or a pond, some sort of water source coyotes have to drink that is nearby, you're probably in the chips. So once I've found those types of areas, what I'm looking to do is get into one of those areas without being seen. I'll use the backside of hills. I'll use a dry creek, something like that allows me not to silhouette myself and get into those areas quietly. Sometimes this requires a bit of a walk. Get the truck hidden and don't be afraid to walk a little farther. A lot of coyote hunters, especially on public land, aren't willing to really get out and walk and burn the boot leather and cover the country. So getting into these areas is absolutely paramount. Once you're into the area and you get set up, what I like to do is make sure I have a very good vantage point. This can be something as little as a small little hill or rise or something like that. Make sure you have good back cover. You don't want to silhouette yourself at all. Make sure you have good back cover and everything out front is open. You want to make sure that you are upwind of the area that you're calling into. And if you can get set up and get the caller going in those areas, you have a good chance of calling a coyote close. That's your sage type country. That's your rolling hills, your cedar choked areas with little bitty canyons slicing through them. Those are things that I'm looking for. Something else, and don't overlook this because it's my opinion that a lot of coyote hunters do, is exactly what you see behind me. I call this the bald open prairie. And there's places like this across the country. It doesn't have to be prairie. It can be ag fields. It can be lots of different things that fall into that real flat landscape. A lot of coyote hunters will ignore them because they just don't believe coyotes are out there, but that's just not the case. Coyotes don't need much cover to hide. All they need is about 4 inches of grass. They can get up against one little bush out there and bed down. They can get on a fence row. Any of those types of things will provide them with enough cover. Look for areas in the open where cattle roam and other prey abounds. Some of that prey, of course, includes bird life, but prairie dogs, pronghorn antelope, mule deer, those are types of food sources that coyotes will key on throughout the year. Again, you might have to go on a bit of a walk. getting into these areas. By the time you get the truck hid, you may have to park the truck a long ways away and then close the distance and get in. Pay attention while you're walking in. Use a tumbleweed lined fence row. Use little micro topography to get in. There might be a little slice in the landscape or a small dip or an isolated little creek that's dry, a canal system that you can use to access these areas. When walking in, keep those eyes up. Make sure you don't see anything running out. If you can get into these areas and set up, you can see a long ways and your sound will really carry on a calm day, and you can have coyotes come running from a long distance away. I get asked the question a lot, yeah, I'm not out west, I don't have the plains, etc., etc. Here's the deal, coyotes abound throughout the country, and one thing that about everybody has is areas of heavy woods, sparse woods, wooded waterways. I love woods that have a small creek, a large river system, whatever running through them, because these are natural travel corridors and they're also full of game animals. They're full of game that coyotes can feed on. They provide great cover where coyotes again can bed, they can nap, they can loaf, they can cruise. Everything's just right for them. Plus they have a water source right there at their disposal all the time. The key is not getting into the timber. I don't like to get in super tight and get in that thick timber, because here's what typically happens. Coyotes pinpoint exactly where a sound is coming from. And often, even if I have the rifle on the sticks or the shotgun on the sticks, which you should have, those coyotes will pop up so close and they'll surprise you so quickly, because they'll use every bit of cover they can to not expose themselves as they're coming in, to either one, get downwind of you and you'll never see them, or two, if you do see them, they're so close, by the time you can get on the sticks, they're a pinball going through that timber, and it presents you with a very low odds shot. So what I like to do is back up off those wooded areas. Use agricultural fields. Use flat open areas for your approach. Get in within 150, 200, 250 yards of that timber, that area where you believe those coyotes are staying. Sit down, get some cover at your back, and call into those wooded areas and bring those coyotes out. Lastly, and this one's more important than ever, and it sounds like a no-brainer, but you can have the best caller in the world, you can have the best, what you feel is the right location in the world, you can get in undetected, but if coyotes aren't in the area, you're not going to call them. So while you're out scouting, while you're out hunting, while you're out looking, pay attention to sign. Coyotes leave lots of sign. They leave tracks. They leave droppings. It's not hard to tell if coyotes are in the area. One of my favorite tactics for knowing if coyotes are in the area, if I'm going to hunt it, I'll take a cruise the night before throughout the season at some point during the hours where it's completely dark, and I will use my howler to see who's out and about. Send an interrogation howl, which is a simple howl anyone can learn, or have your e-caller play it. Send it out into the landscape, see who responds, know where those coyotes are, and then that next morning, go in, make your move, get set up, and get them killed. If you follow these tips and tactics, you are going to kill more coyotes and you're going to have a lot more fun on your stands. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'm Jace Boserman.